Welcome to Knowledge 12, and today we're on our last lesson, Lesson 9, where we're going to be celebrating those who fought for a cause or fought for a change. And before we go and celebrate those people, awesome people we talked about, let's go through our word work words. I will read the word, you repeat it after me. Courage, balance, admirable, proud, challenge, boycott, extraordinary, polite. Again, as we've gone through, we've read about our 7 people and learned more about who they are. And today we're going to be celebrating and summarizing their achievements. So after today's read aloud, you need to be able to describe facts that support the author's statement that these were extraordinary people who brought about new and fairer laws, and also show an understanding of the word obstacles. You have listened to stories of 7 extraordinary or amazing people who dedicated their lives to making sure that all Americans have equal rights. What are equal rights? That means, yes, fairness for all people. These great Americans were able to bring about change that resulted in new, fair laws. They were able to do this because the United States, since its creation, had a democratic form of government. Democratic form of government is one that includes the right for people to vote for their leaders. This means that the citizens of the United States are involved in the political process. People can vote for political leaders who represent their interests and needs. It took a while for every American adult to gain the right to vote, but eventually it did happen. Now each person has an equal say in deciding what kind of government they want. In order to vote in the United States, a person must be 18 years old and a citizen. That means that he or she must have been born in the United States, have parents who are American citizens, or have been granted citizenship. People who are granted citizenship are called naturalized citizens. Naturalized citizens are people who were born in another country but have chosen to become citizens of the United States. Every 2 years and every 4 years, important elections are held. People go to places called polls to vote. As you have learned, the right to vote is called suffrage. Voters can decide who should lead their state and who should lead the nation. They can help decide if taxes or money should be raised by the government to pay for important things communities need, such as hospitals, schools, and libraries, or whether taxes should be reduced so that people have a little more money to spend. These are important choices that affect all Americans. Suffrage is a way to make sure the government is following the wishes of the people that it serves. Today, we take for granted that adult citizens, American citizens, have the right to vote. We hardly think about it at all. But you have heard about the journey that people long ago went to make this a reality. You have also heard about obstacles that were placed in the paths along the way. Obstacles are people or things standing in the way of an action, preventing something from happening. Let's now review the lives of the brave people you have just learned about. What is Susan B. Anthony famous for? Susan B. Anthony worked to expand women's rights in America, especially the right to vote. A woman must not depend upon the protection of man, but must be taught to protect herself, she once said. Susan was a famous leader of the women's rights movement. Sadly, Susan did not live to see the passage of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in 1920, which made it legal for women to vote. Without Susan's efforts, however, the battle for women's rights might have gone on for much longer. Eleanor Roosevelt worked to improve the civil rights and human rights for many groups of people in the United States. Remember, civil rights are rights guaranteed by the government. rights that the government says we should have, and human rights are those basic rights like food, shelter, education, work. During the Great Depression, Eleanor worked tirelessly to help those most in need. Eleanor believed that all people should be treated fairly, equally, and with respect. Later in her life, Eleanor worked for the United Nations. She took her message of freedom and equality all over the world. Mary McLeod Bethune worked to create education opportunities for African Americans, especially girls, during the time of segregation. Remember, segregation was keeping groups apart, usually based on things such as their skin color. Mary opened a school that eventually became a 4-year college, and she helped many African American men gain the skills they needed to vote. Mary worked closely with Eleanor Roosevelt and a talented team of African American advisors to improve opportunities for all Americans. Jackie Robinson was said to have broken the color barrier. He became the first African American to play Major League Baseball. When Branch Rickey, the president of the Brooklyn Dodgers, invited Jackie to play for his team, they both knew that they were attempting to change the people's attitudes and end discrimination and segregation in American sports. In 1947, when Jackie played in his first Major League Baseball game at Ebbets Field, he proved that he was not only an incredible baseball player, but he was also a man who had great courage. Jackie made the world a better place. At the end of Jackie's first season with the Dodgers, he was chosen to be Rookie of the Year, and baseball was finally integrated so that people of any race could play together. On that cold December night in 1955, when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus, the world changed. Rosa's actions led to the Montgomery bus boycott. What does that word boycott mean? The power of so many people coming together to end unfair laws ultimately led to the end of legal segregation in the South. Today, many people feel that the civil rights movement really began in that moment when Rosa said no. That is why Rosa is called the mother of the civil rights movement. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the peaceful leader of the civil rights movement. He led the bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama. Martin promoted change and the achievement of equal rights through nonviolence. Martin's powerful speeches changed people's hearts and minds. He led the way to change laws that were 100 years old, allowing African Americans to fully participate in American society. As a nation, we honor Martin's work each year on the third Monday in the month of January. Cesar Chavez was once a migrant worker. Members of his family were migrant workers too. During those years, Caesar became aware of how hard life could be for people without any rights or protections. Migrant workers worked long hours for little pay. They often lived in overcrowded camps. Migrant workers could rarely afford health care. Caesar vowed to change all of this. He dedicated his life to make sure that all farm workers, including migrant workers, had certain basic rights. Caesar brought people together and created a labor union called the National Farm Workers Association. Eventually, through his efforts, Caesar succeeded in getting better pay and working conditions for all migrant workers. Without his determined leadership, these things might never have happened. Today, there are many people who work to make sure everyone in the United States is treated fairly and that their rights are respected. In just one example, it is important that people who have disabilities and who are challenged physically or mentally are treated fair and equally, too. People with disabilities might have trouble seeing or hearing or walking. They might need to use wheelchairs, walkers, hearing aids, or service dogs. They may have special devices to help them talk on a telephone, or they may use service dogs to guide them along sidewalks and into buildings. On July 26, 1990, President George H. W. Bush signed a new law called the Americans with Disabilities Act. This law gives protection to people with disabilities. For one thing, this law states that all people should be allowed easier access to all places people enjoy going to, such as restaurants, movie theaters, libraries, and other buildings and public places. The law also states that public transportation, such as buses, trains, must have paths and entries that are easy to manage, such as ramps, lifts, or elevators. This law often also offers help to those people who have diseases that are not curable and diseases that make it hard for people to take care of themselves. And so, you see, it is important that we stand up and recognize when people are being treated unfairly. We have just one world that we all share together. No person, because of the color of their skin, no cultural group or religious group should ever be treated unfairly. We have a responsibility to treat all human beings with dignity and respect. As Dr. Martin Luther King once said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. So the author of this read aloud said, these great Americans were able to bring about changes that resulted in new, fair laws. What are some facts that did the author give to support this statement? Well, there's many different facts, such as Rosa Parks saying no and standing up for things she believed in to make it fair, or Martin Luther King Jr. leading nonviolent protests. Many facts that support that statement. Our word today is the word obstacles. I will read the word. You repeat it after me. Obstacles. Obstacles are things that stand in the way of forward moving or that hold up progress. So all individuals who fight for a cause have to overcome at least some obstacles. What's Can you tell me a time when obstacles stopped or prevented you from doing something or going somewhere? Okay, I'll have a sentence. You tell me if that is an obstacle or that is not an obstacle. Trying to ice skate in a crowded rink. That is an obstacle. The obstacle would be all the people around. Construction crew blocking the road. That would be an obstacle. They're blocking the way and moving. Riding your bike with a flat tire. Another obstacle. Walking in an open field. Nope, there is no obstacle there. Running alone on a school track. That would not be an obstacle. When a team wins a sports tournament. Not an obstacle. When a family takes a walk together in the park. Nope, that is not an obstacle. When a bird loses their habitat or home because of a forest fire. That would be an obstacle. Again, that was our unit on people fighting for a cause. Thank you for listening.